I died, and Jesus told me something that still shakes me every time I say it out loud. After August 15th, the fate of my people will change forever. Now, I know how that sounds. Like some headline cooked up to grab attention. But this isn't a story you scroll past while sipping coffee. This wasn't meant for just anybody. No, deep down, I knew it was for me, and for every believer out there who still thinks they have time to get right with God. That day didn't start out dramatic. No storms, no sirens, no movie music building up in the background. Just me, Earl Whitman, 67 years old, retired architect, puttering around my small home on the outskirts of Tucson, Arizona. The kind of morning where the air is still cool enough to fool you into thinking it won't hit triple digits later. I figured I'd knock out my chores before the desert sun turned the yard into a frying pan. I grabbed my old mower, the one with the handle that wobbles if you push too hard, and got to work. The smell of fresh cut grass filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of creosote from a light rain 2 nights before. I remember thinking, this isn't so bad. Maybe I'll even have time for a second cup of coffee before the heat kicks in. Then it happened. No warning, no slow build, just boom. It was like a bomb went off inside my chest. A white-hot pain exploded, ripping down my left arm and shooting up into my jaw. My knees gave out. I collapsed forward, my face pressing into the warm earth. I could taste the dirt, feel the sting of tiny rocks scraping my cheek. The world around me narrowed like someone was twisting a camera lens, pulling all the light into a single dark tunnel. I tried to call out, "Oh my God," but my voice came out as a wheeze. The roar of the mower faded into a low hum. My hearing dimmed, like someone had stuffed cotton in my ears. And then, the darkness swallowed me whole. But here's the thing, it didn't feel like dying. It felt like being unplugged from one place and plugged into another. 1 second I was lying in my yard. The next I was floating above it, staring down at a man sprawled out on the grass. Same worn jeans, same faded ball cap. Me, but not me. My body was there, still and heavy, and I was somewhere else entirely. And then I saw it. The light. It wasn't just brightness, it was alive. It reached for me, pulling me in. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. Stepping into that light was like stepping into the warmest, safest place I'd ever known. And there, standing in the middle of it, was Jesus. No picture, no painting, no Sunday school flannel board could have prepared me for that moment. My words felt too small, my voice too weak, so I said nothing. But he spoke. "Earl," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I've been waiting for you." And right there, before I could even catch my breath, he told me the thing that would burn into my heart for the rest of my life. Before that moment in the light, before the words that would haunt me, life had been, well, quiet, not perfect, but steady enough that I thought I had it all figured out. I've lived in the same small, one-story home on the edge of Tucson, Arizona, for over 20 years. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every crack in the driveway, every stubborn patch of grass that refused to grow no matter how much water I poured on it. After my wife, Helen, passed 5 years ago, it was just me. No kids in the house, no dog underfoot, just the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional rattle from the old AC unit. Most mornings started the same, up before the sun, coffee brewing while the desert sky slowly shifted from deep indigo to pale gold. I'd sip from my chipped mug, leaning on the porch rail, watching the light spill over the distant Catalina mountains. There's something about the desert at dawn, it feels honest. The air is cool, almost gentle, but you can't forget that by noon, the heat will bear down like a hammer. My neighbors were mostly older couples, folks who waved from their driveways but didn't linger. Now and then, I'd chat with Tom, the retired mailman across the street. He liked to check in on me, though he always kept the conversation short. Probably didn't want to look nosy. Health-wise, I'd been slowing down. My knees ached after too much time on the ladder. My back stiffened if I sat too long. But it was the chest twinges that kept me guessing. Sometimes it felt like a small cramp. Other times like someone had tightened a belt around my ribs. I'd brush it off. Probably just indigestion. The last thing I wanted was to be poked and prodded in some doctor's office. The truth? I'd been carrying more than physical aches. Losing Helen left a hollow space I didn't know how to fill. My son, Michael, and I weren't speaking much these days. Too many arguments about faith. Too many words neither of us could take back. So, I filled my time with projects. Fixing loose shutters, repainting the shed, trimming the mesquite trees out back. If my hands were busy, maybe my mind would stay quiet. That's the life I was living before it happened. Simple, predictable, comfortable in the way an old pair of boots is comfortable. You know every scuff and crease. But you also know the soles are wearing thin. Looking back now, I realize there were signs. Little ones. Moments where something deep inside whispered, "Pay attention." The ache in my chest after hauling groceries. That dizzy spell last fall while raking leaves. But I ignored them. I told myself I had time. And that's the cruel thing about thinking you have time. You never really know when you don't. It was one of those July mornings when the air feels heavy. Even before the sun really gets going. By 7 a.m., I could already see the shimmer of heat rising off the asphalt in the distance. I figured I'd get the lawn done before the temperature climbed past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe even before my second cup of coffee went cold. I pushed the old mower out of the shed. The one with a chipped green handle and a motor that coughed like an old man in winter. The smell of oil and metal mixed with the sweet scent of Bermuda grass. My cap was pulled low to keep the glare out of my eyes. And for the first few passes, it felt like just another morning chore. Halfway across the yard, it hit. No warning, no slow build, just bang. The pain punched through my chest like a sledgehammer, sharp and deep, radiating down my left arm and up into my jaw. My breath caught, and suddenly the air felt too thick to swallow. My knees buckled, the world tilted. I remember the color of the dirt as my face hit the ground, light brown with tiny flecks of white quartz. I could smell the fresh-cut grass and the faint, earthy scent from the flower beds Helen had planted years ago. My hands clenched at my shirt, but the pain didn't ease. If anything, it grew heavier, like someone was pressing a cinder block right on top of my heart. I tried to call out, maybe for help, maybe for God, but what came out was more of a wheeze than a word. The mower kept running somewhere beside me, its hum sounding distant, almost muffled, like it was coming from the far end of a tunnel. My hearing dulled, my vision blurred, and then the darkness came. It wasn't the kind of darkness you get when you close your eyes. It was deep, thick, complete, the kind of black that swallows you whole. My thoughts scattered, the pounding of my heart slowed until I couldn't feel it at all. And in that terrifying stillness, one thought surfaced, this might be it. But instead of fear, something strange washed over me, a jolt, almost like electricity snapping through my body. Sharp, quick, and then, nothing. The pain vanished, the weight was gone. I wasn't lying on the grass anymore. I was above it, floating, somehow, looking down at the body sprawled out by the mower, same faded jeans. Same dusty boots, me, but not me. I felt lighter than air, yet more aware than I'd ever been. The sun glinted off the metal of the mower blade, catching my eye just long enough for the world to start fading away. And then, the light appeared. It was bright, but not blinding, warm, but not burning. It didn't just shine, it pulled, like a current drawing me in. And I didn't fight it. I couldn't. The pull of that light was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't just drawing me in, it was wrapping around me, filling me with a sense of warmth so deep it made every fear, every ache, every doubt dissolve like mist under the sun. The world I knew, my yard, the heat of the Arizona morning, the broken mower, slipped away until there was nothing left but that glow. It wasn't blinding. It didn't hurt my eyes. If anything, the longer I looked, the more I could see within it, layers of color, gold and white and something I can't name, like the shimmer of sunlight on water. And then, through the light, I sensed movement, not footsteps exactly, but the presence of someone coming closer. My heart, if I even had one in this form, felt like it was both racing and perfectly still at the same time. He stepped forward, and I knew instantly who he was. There was no need for introductions. No need for explanations. I'd seen pictures in Sunday school books, paintings in church halls, but they were pale shadows compared to this. It was Jesus. The moment my mind formed the word, my knees, or whatever I had now, felt weak. I wanted to speak, to say Lord, but the word caught in my throat. It was like every part of me knew that language itself wasn't enough to hold what I was feeling. My thoughts were loud, yet my voice was nothing but a whisper in this place. Earl, he said. Just my name. 2 syllables, yet it was like they carried the weight of my entire life, every joy, every mistake, every unanswered prayer. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled everything. Deep, steady, rich with a kindness that made my chest ache. I've been waiting for you. I can't explain what happened inside me when I heard that. It was like every part of me wanted to collapse in gratitude and break into tears at the same time. Waiting for me? After all the years I'd doubted him. After the bitterness I'd carried since Helen died? He still wanted me here. Before I could say anything, his tone shifted, not cold, not harsh, but firm. After August 15th, the fate of my people will change. The words hit me like a hammer. I didn't know whether to be afraid or hopeful. The way he said it, it wasn't a prediction. It was a certainty. Something in his eyes told me this wasn't far off prophecy. This was close. Suddenly, the light around us shifted, and I felt myself being lifted, as if an invisible hand had taken hold of me and was carrying me higher. Higher still. The ground, if there had been any, was gone. The light dimmed just enough for me to see what was below. The world. Oceans stretched out in shimmering blue. Clouds swirled over continents. I could make out cities, rivers, mountain ranges, all alive with movement. At first, it was breathtaking, like looking at the most perfect, living map imaginable. Then it changed. At first, the view of the earth below was beautiful, oceans shimmering under sunlight, mountain ranges stretching like the spine of the planet, cities glittering like constellations scattered across the land. But then, in the space of a heartbeat, it shifted. It was like watching a film reel burn in the middle, the image warping, colors distorting. That beauty gave way to a scene that made my stomach knot. I saw towers of glass and steel in New York flashing with red numbers, stock tickers plummeting, traders shouting into phones, their faces tight with panic. In London, in Tokyo, in cities I couldn't name, it was the same, markets crashing, numbers spiraling downward as if gravity itself had pulled the whole financial world into a pit. Banks slammed their doors shut. People banged on the glass, their fists leaving smudges, their voices rising in desperation. ATMs spat out insufficient funds messages or nothing at all. Long lines formed in the heat, people clutching empty grocery bags like lifelines. I was pulled closer, as if Jesus wanted me to see not just the chaos, but the faces. Parents clutching children with hollow eyes, elderly couples counting coins in shaking hands. And in grocery stores, the shelves were stripped bare. People grabbed at whatever was left, cans of beans, stale bread, arguing, shoving, even fighting. I saw a man pay nearly a week's wages for a gallon of milk, his face tight with shame as he handed over the crumpled bills. Then the government came on the screens, calm voices, rehearsed smiles, promises of stability. We're here to fix things, they said, but Jesus' gaze told me it was a trap. Laws were passed almost overnight. Ration cards were issued, but you couldn't get one without registering for a new kind of identification, a digital ID that tracked everything you bought. And there was more, a clause hidden in the fine print, a declaration that you had to sign to receive aid. It was a pledge, not to God, but to the state, an oath renouncing your faith, promising allegiance to the unified national interest. Churches closed without warning. I saw doors chained shut, signs that read repurposed for community distribution. Sanctuaries turned into warehouses for rice and powdered milk. But to step inside and receive food, you had to sign the oath. I saw people I recognized, neighbors, old friends from Bible study, standing in those lines. One man, who looked like my neighbor Tom, hesitated with the pen in his hand. His children clung to his coat, their stomachs growling. He whispered something, maybe for the kids, before signing. He walked away with a bag of food, but his shoulders slumped as if something in him had died right there. My chest tightened. I could feel the same choice pressing on me. The weight of hunger against the weight of faith. I had been there before. After Helen died, when I'd questioned everything, and now I was watching it happen to thousands. Jesus' voice cut through the scene. Steady and clear. This is not far away. This is not a story. This is the test. The vision shifted again, pulling me from the chaos of the city streets into the smaller, quieter places where the real battles were being fought, inside living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms. I saw a young couple in a modest home, their dining table bare except for a stack of unpaid bills and a single half-empty loaf of bread. The husband clutched a worn Bible to his chest, his jaw set. The wife sat across from him, her hands shaking as she pleaded, "We can't keep doing this. James, the kids are hungry. Just sign the paper. We'll figure the rest out later." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the storm inside. "God will provide. We can't trade him for bread." The wife's tears spilled over. She slammed her hands down, rattling the table. "Faith doesn't put food in their stomachs," she cried. And then she said the words that cut deeper than any knife. "Maybe he's not even listening." The scene blurred, replaced by another. This time, an older couple stood in their kitchen. Divorce papers spread across the counter. Years of love seemed to hang in the air between them. But their voices were sharp. "I can't watch you let us starve because of this stubbornness," the wife said, her voice trembling with anger. The husband didn't shout back. He just looked down at the floor, shoulders heavy, as if the weight of both hunger and heartbreak was too much to carry. I saw children storming out of homes, slamming doors behind them, shouting, "You're crazy for believing this." Teenagers walked away without looking back. Their parents left standing in the doorway clutching crosses that suddenly felt too heavy. Fear spread like a virus, faster than any sickness. Neighbors whispered in the dark, blaming one another. "Where's God now?" they muttered. "Why isn't he fixing this?" People who once prayed daily stopped. At first, they skipped a morning prayer, then a day, then a week, and before long, their Bibles gathered dust. Some went further. I saw men on street corners, shouting into the wind, "God's not real. Look at us, hungry, broke, abandoned." Their voices were bitter, but beneath the bitterness was something worse, hopelessness. And their words spread, pulling others into the same pit. Jesus' voice came again, calm but heavy with sorrow. "This is the great falling away. Many hearts will grow cold because of lawlessness and hardship." I knew the scripture, Matthew chapter 24, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. But knowing it and seeing it unfold were two very different things. This wasn't just about losing food or money. This was about losing faith. Just when I thought the vision couldn't get any darker, the scene shifted. The noise of shouting and slammed doors faded, replaced by a soft murmur, like wind moving through pine trees. I found myself looking into the dim glow of a basement lit by a single lantern. Around it sat a group of maybe 10 people, men, women, even a few children, sitting on crates and old blankets. Their clothes were worn, their shoes patched, but their faces shone with something I hadn't seen in the other scenes. Peace. In the center of the circle sat a single potato. One. No seasoning, no butter. Just a dirt-streaked potato passed from hand to hand. Each person took a small bite, chewing slowly as if it were a feast. And they smiled, not the forced smiles you wear to hide pain, but real, deep smiles that came from somewhere unshakable. The vision shifted again, and I saw another group in a forest clearing. The trees stood tall around them, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. They passed around a single bottle of water, each taking a sip and handing it on with quiet laughter, as if they were sharing something far richer than water. "They have what the world cannot take," Jesus' voice whispered beside me. I watched as they prayed together, heads bowed, voices low. No one barked orders, no one fought for position. They were a family, not by blood, but by choice. And somehow, even with nothing, they had everything. Then I saw a young woman lying on a cot in that basement from before. Her skin was pale, her forehead damp with sweat. She was on the edge of death, some sickness taking what little strength she had left. The group gathered around her, laying gentle hands on her shoulders and arms. "Lord, you are our healer," one man prayed, his voice steady but urgent. They didn't shout, they didn't demand, they simply asked. And then I saw it happen, color returning to her cheeks, her breathing easing, her eyes fluttered open, wide with wonder. She sat up slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. The group gasped, then laughed, hugging her with tears streaming down their faces. A miracle, plain and simple. The next image burned into me even more. In a small camp deep in the woods, an elderly man sat by a dying fire. His ribs showed through his shirt. He hadn't eaten in days. The group prayed again, asking God to provide. Moments later, 2 doves flew down, landing just a few feet away. From their beaks, they dropped seeds, tiny, ordinary seeds, enough to plant, enough to live. I thought of Matthew chapter 6 verse 26, where Jesus says that God feeds the birds, and how much more he will care for his children. It wasn't just about food. It was a sign, a reminder that God still moves in the middle of the worst storms. And as I watched, I realized these people weren't just surviving. They were living, truly living. The vision shifted once more, and I knew immediately this was different. The quiet warmth of the forest and the dim basement lanterns were gone. Now I was looking at the open sky, vast, endless, stretching over every city, every desert plain, every coastline at once. It was August 15th. I don't know how I knew, but I felt it deep in my bones. The sky didn't just brighten, it fractured. Not like clouds parting after a storm. Not like lightning tearing across the night. No, this was something wholly other. A great seam of light opened in the heavens, wide enough to make the air itself hum. And from that opening emerged a glowing orb, perfectly round, pulsing like it carried the heartbeat of creation itself. It wasn't stuck in one sky. Somehow, impossibly, it was in all skies at once. People in Times Square craned their necks, their phones raised, faces lit by that strange brilliance. Farmers in Kansas stopped mid-step in their fields, dirt still clinging to their boots. Fishermen off the coast of Maine let their nets drift as they stared upward. No one could look away. Some fell to their knees immediately, tears streaking their cheeks. I saw an old woman in a tattered coat raise her arms toward the light and whisper, "Thank you, Lord." I saw a man in the middle of an empty field close his eyes and smile as if this was the moment he had been waiting for his whole life. But not everyone reacted that way. Crowds in cities swarmed like ants, panic boiling over. I heard people shouting, "What is it? Is it dangerous?" Others clung to strangers, begging for an explanation. News anchors stammered on live broadcasts. Scientists speculated about atmospheric phenomena, but their words fell flat. Deep down, everyone knew this wasn't natural. Then I saw the other faces, the ones who had turned away from God long ago, or had once believed but let their faith grow cold. They stared at the sky with wide, terrified eyes. Some screamed, others muttered to themselves, "This can't be God. It can't be." But their voices shook with the kind of fear that only comes when the truth you've denied stands in front of you. And in that moment, it was as if the world itself paused, waiting for each person to decide. Believers stood still, calm, eyes fixed on the light with the steady certainty of people who had prepared for this very hour. The rest scrambled, searching for shelter, as if they could hide from what was happening above. Jesus' voice was there beside me, low and steady. "This is the line in the sand. There will be no middle ground after this." And as suddenly as it had appeared, the orb began to fade. But with its fading came a shift in the air, something darker, heavier, the kind of stillness that warns you the storm isn't far behind. The moment the glowing orb faded from the sky, the air itself seemed to groan. It was as if the world had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. But what came next wasn't relief. It was chaos. The vision dropped me into the heart of Los Angeles just as the ground began to shudder. At first, it was a low rumble underfoot, like a passing freight train. But within seconds, the shaking grew violent. Skyscrapers swayed like reeds in the wind. Glass shattered, raining down in glittering sheets. Asphalt split apart, opening jagged chasms that swallowed cars whole. Before the dust even settled, the scene shifted. I was on the coastline of Oregon, watching the ocean recede in a way that made the hair on my neck stand up. People froze, staring at the exposed seabed, fish flopping helplessly on wet sand. Then came the roar, a sound so deep and loud it felt like the earth itself was screaming. A wall of water rose on the horizon, taller than any building, and crashed forward, devouring everything in its path. I didn't have time to catch my breath. The vision pulled me to the Midwest, where a storm the size of a small country churned across the plains. Tornadoes spun off its edges like angry children, ripping apart farmhouses, tossing trucks like toys. The wind howled, carrying with it the metallic tang of destruction. Back in Phoenix, my own backyard, dust storms rolled in thick as smoke. Visibility dropped to just a few feet. Power lines sparked and fell, igniting fires that leapt from house to house. No sirens, no fire trucks, just the eerie crackle of flames and the coughing of those trying to breathe. And then came the sickness. Old plagues long thought gone, cholera, typhoid, spread through filthy water. New diseases with no names followed close behind. Hospitals were dark, abandoned, their halls littered with the groans of the dying. In the streets, order collapsed overnight. Without police, without emergency services, the thin line between civility and savagery snapped. I saw people smashing store windows, fighting over scraps, a bag of rice, a jug of water. In one parking lot, two men fought with tire irons over a single can of beans. Their shouts drowned out by the sound of fists hitting flesh. And yet, worse than the destruction was the look in people's eyes. Gone was the spark of hope I'd seen in the believers. These faces were hollow, their movements slow and mechanical. Parents stared at photos of children they'd lost. Old men wandered alleys, muttering to themselves. People sat on curbs, rocking back and forth, whispering for it all to end. I thought of Revelation chapter 18, where Babylon falls and the merchants of the earth weep because their wealth is gone. But here, it wasn't just wealth that was gone. It was meaning, purpose, the will to live. Jesus' voice came to me again, and this time it was like a steady anchor in a hurricane. Those who built on sand will fall, but those who built on me will stand. The vision did not end in the ruins. Out of the smoke and rubble, I began to see pockets of light, small gatherings of people, moving steadily through the wreckage with a peace that made no sense to the world around them. In one flooded street, water up to their chests, a dozen believers carried supplies toward a crumbling school building they had turned into a shelter. Pieces of wood and debris floated past them, but somehow the current didn't sweep them away. I saw others nearby, people without faith, struggling, pulled under by the same water, their cries echoing down the ruined avenue. They walk with me. Jesus' voice came beside me. And when you walk with me, the flood cannot take you. In another scene, I saw a family living in a broken apartment block in the middle of a city ravaged by disease. All around them, people coughed and wheezed, their skin pale, their bodies frail. But this family was healthy, strong, moving with purpose. They weren't hiding, either. Each day they carried buckets of water to the sick, laid hands on the weak, and prayed over them. I watched as a man, too weak to stand, reached out to them. They knelt beside him, and as they prayed, his breathing eased, color returned to his face. His eyes opened wide with wonder. It was a miracle, but to them, it was just another day walking in faith. Then came the moment that would mark me forever. Jesus turned to me, his eyes both fierce and kind, and said, "Earl, prepare, not with food or weapons, for those will be stolen or destroyed. Prepare with a heart steadfast in me." He gave me 3 instructions, each one etched into my soul. First, hold fast to your faith. Let no news, no disaster, no voice of the world shake your trust in me. Second, forgive and make peace with all. Remove the thorns of bitterness so I can dwell in you. Third, live in my word every day. It will be your light in the darkness. Then he reached out, not with a hand of flesh, but with power itself, and touched my forehead. Warmth poured through me, rushing to every corner of my being. The weight of my 67 years melted away. The aches were gone. My heart felt young again, strong enough to run for miles. Tell them, he said, his voice like the sound of a bell ringing clear across a valley. Now is the time to choose a side. And then, in a rush of light and sound, I was pulled back, past the disasters, past the skies, past my street in Tucson, until I was lying once more on my lawn, gasping under the Arizona sun. The paramedics' voices were urgent, but all I could think of was the mission burning inside me. I had seen it, I had heard him, and now, I had to tell you. So I ask you, if the sky split open tomorrow, which side would you be on?